Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today on this Friday. We got a lot of good stuff for you and some pretty big stuff, some important news. Joe Biden now says, I feel like once again, like the media is kind of reporting this like as if this is like the first time he said it, every time he said it, because he has kind of, or U.S. intelligence has said that the U.S. is like, or Russia's about to invade, but now, you know, they're saying, folks, it's really happening for real this time. Don't really know when. We'll get into it. We'll give you all the latest updates on all things Russia and Ukraine. And back home, the first round of Democratic leaking against the so-called squad, as one might call it, in Axios beginning, getting ready for the midterms in their catastrophic loss. They're planning to blame it all on the left wing of the party, folks. No surprise. And in Jacobin, we will go to Ryan Zickgraf for a piece about Stan Kronke, making the case that, all professional sports teams owners are pretty bad, but instead of billionaire LA Rams owner Stan Kronke hosting the Super Bowl and hoisting it on Sunday should inspire particular revulsion. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Newsflash. Let's get started. All right, so yeah, we're really kind of a pretty crazy situation here. Just about 5:30 or so, President Biden coming out saying on this Friday that it does look like, in his estimation, and of course, United States intelligence estimation, that Russia has decided to invade Ukraine. So not really looking like the again, when I say that, I say always, how it is on this show. Take that with a grain of salt, for sure. We talked about it in the last show, what was the theme there? How many times people are saying, oh, Ukraine's going to get invaded, it's going to happen, like they're really hyping things up. United States trying to make it, look imminent. They're not pulling their troops out of NATO. They're not, NATO saying they're not Russia's not pulling their troops out of Ukraine. They're not doing it. Trust us. Like the satellite position saying different things. Nobody quite knows for sure. Biden making these press conferences, and it really does seem like things are coming to a head, or at least the United States is trying to make things come to a head. So Biden held another round of urgent talks with European leaders on Friday afternoon as the United States and its allies continued to warn that Russia was poised to invade Ukraine and trigger the largest conflict on the continent since World War II. So Biden said after and again, the idea that for Russia right now, in the way they're currently constituted, an idea that they would have to be pretty crazy to launch a full-scale Kiev sacking, regime change invasion of Ukraine at the moment. And it just really seems like, it really just seems like that just does not seem to be in the cards for them. So, like, again, Putin, like, and any person looking at it can figure that. So, like, why would Putin do such a thing at this time? And we have yet to see it materialize. We're seeing a lot of conflicting reports. I remember it was like this just like a few days ago. Bloomberg literally had on their front page, look, Russia invades Ukraine. AP report. Russia about to imminent invasion of Ukraine. Oh, it was just U.S. intelligence saying that. It's just like this thing is happening. I think it was last Friday that they said was going to be invading, imminent invasion threat all weekend long, and nothing happened. Like, it just is. I see all these things, and they just get completely like the deadlines are passed, and the fact that deadlines are passed are completely ignored, and nobody ever looks into that at all. Nobody bothers. So Biden said, we have reason to believe the Russian forces are planning to and intend to attack Ukraine in the coming weeks and the coming days. Coming days, coming week, either or. So, again, U.S. intelligence really knocking it out of the park once again, saying that we believe they'll target Ukraine's capital, Kiev. They moved their embassy out of Kiev earlier this week. So Biden and NATO allies remained united in their support of Ukraine and promised the United States and the European Union would punish Russia with economic sanctions if Russia chose war. He accused Russia of pushing out more and more disinformation in recent days intended to paint Ukraine as the aggressors, including phony allegations that Ukraine intended a genocide against ethnic Russians and fabricated claims that Ukraine intended to launch a major attack in the Donbas region controlled by Russian-backed separatists. So, again, the United States here has been kind of throwing all different slings and arrows, and, they made these claims, Russia has made these claims, but, really on both sides, and the United States is definitely making more severe claims about Russia's activity. We played, I think a few weeks ago now on the show, we played that clip of Ned Price being like, actually I believe that was on the Spencer Wall Show, my other podcast with WMFO on Tufts. We played the clip of Ned Price, the State Department spokesperson, getting interviewed or getting like really kind of questioned pretty damn hard by that AP reporter, and was like, where's your evidence for the claim that Russia's, planning a false flag attack or planning to accuse somebody of a false flag attack? Like, it was just like they're hiring crisis actors. They're going to make a propaganda video of it, just this atrocity, and use that to spark war. They're just throwing everything out, and there seems to be no collective memory that expands to cover the last thing that they said. Everyone forgets about their past promises, which is kind of making me feel like I'm going insane here. And, if you go back, we covered these stories in the papers, in these same papers on the show, and they're just not addressed and put into context. So, he accused Russia of putting out more and more disinformation in recent days to paint Ukraine as the aggressors. He says there is simply no evidence of these assertions, and defies basic logic to believe that Ukrainians would choose this moment with well over 150,000 troops arrayed on its borders to escalate a years-long conflict. Tension in the region escalated on Friday as a Russian-backed separatist in eastern Ukraine called for a mass evacuation of the area on Friday, claiming Ukraine was about to attack, a dire development that Western officials denounced as Russia's latest attempt to create a pretext for Vladimir Putin to send tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine. As U.S. State Department official who would only discuss the crisis on condition of anonymity said the announcements like these are further attempts to obscure through lies and disinformation that Russia is the aggressor in this conflict. So again, really, point out all the stops here. So we have the senior American officials also said for the first time that they believe Russia was responsible for cyber attacks on Ukrainian banks this week, and they warned that they're bracing for possible cyber attacks on Russia by American targets if the United States and its allies impose tough sanctions on Russia. So, again, we are seeing pretty much everything that possibly will go wrong, can go wrong here, will go wrong. It's going to all go bad. And, all these promises are going to be made, all these assurances are going to be made, and it's just like, it seems, again, there is no real, mechanism of credibility, no real, assurances that there is actually going to be any kind of, addressing of, what these people said at the time that they said it, a few weeks ago, all these different promises of invasions, they're going to sack Kiev, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. That just does not seem to be working. We've got to escalate it in different ways. So, White House officials said that Biden will deliver remarks about the looming crisis after the conclusion of his virtual meetings with his allies. His speech is the second this week, following a new assessment by American officials based in Europe that Russia has had as many as 190,000 troops massed at the Ukrainian border inside two pro-Moscow separatist regions, Donetsk and Luhansk. So pretty much, yeah, those are the two regions that pretty much everyone recognizes as the Russian areas. And the British diplomat, the British, kind of quote unquote Secretary of State went over there and asked, do you recognize the sovereignty over those areas? Donetsk and Luhansk, these oblasts is what they're called, or they're just these regions, these states, and she was like, "We will never do that ever." But Yeah. So it really just shows you where, the quality of Western diplomacy on this issue. Yeah, so he said just 2 days ago. Oh, here we go. Okay, here we go. He said just 2 days ago that 150,000 Russian troops were ready to participate in an invasion. Friday's assessment by the U.S. mission to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe indicated the larger number includes military troops and other Russian-led or backed forces, as unverified reports of Ukrainian attacks and acts of sabotage in the separatist regions filled Russian state media. Ukrainian military intelligence warned on Friday that Russian forces had mined social infrastructure facilities in Donetsk. The mines were part of an effort, the defense ministry said, to create a false flag attack and create grounds for accusing Ukraine of terrorist attacks. So we're seeing a lot of mudslinging here on both the Ukrainian side and the Russian side from a lot of these kind of pro-Ukrainian separatist groups. And again, a lot of these Ukrainian and military groups here as well. And at the same time, we are seeing, much more de-escalatory rhetoric from the people of or certain people anyway in the Ukrainian government that say, hey, diplomacy is still possible, we can talk this out, we can work this out, we need some more time to actually do this, and they're just not being given up by a lot of this Western rhetoric. So White House officials said that Biden will deliver remarks about the looming crisis shortly after the conclusion of his virtual meeting with his allies. His speech is the second this week, and it follows a new assessment by American officials based in Europe that Russia has many, they have these troops, in these pro-separatist regions. So Biden and the allies have warned for days that they believe that Putin is prepared to stage these fake attacks that could be used to justify an invasion. So pretty much, again, these false flag attacks that they're warning about seem to be it's so hard to try, again, because there's no evidence provided. It just seems like really almost desperate. I may be reading this completely wrong, and you may be sitting here being like, what is this guy talking about? But, if you're talking about Biden and his allies warning for days that they believe Putin is prepared to stage fake attacks that could be used to justify an invasion, in Russian state media. So is Putin going to come out there with a film crew and be like, reenact some sort of great battle and put it on Russian TV to act like it happened? Is that what we're saying here is going on? Because, I love to see it, frankly. I really would love to see it. I'd love to see that evidence come up. So they apparently they plan to manufacture or pretext for its attack. So that pretext would be the fake attack, which would then serve for a real attack for Russia into Ukraine. So possibly the so-called terrorist bombing or a fake or even a real attack with chemical weapons. So saying they would just stage a terrorist attack as a pretext for further incursions, and thinking of a little thing called Operation Northwoods. Go look that up. But anyway, we will see what's going on right now. Pretty much the best I can tell you of what is going on right now is we are seeing what is, I would say, a continuation of a broader trend, which is Biden and the United States intelligence continuing to say there's invasion coming, like 5-alarm fire. This is a serious situation, and then nothing comes. Things are being dragged down the road. We are literally this is last Friday is when this all started, and it hasn't really stopped quite yet. So I think that is probably one of the biggest and most important things that I can highlight for everybody today. It just seems like no real action has been had yet, and if we see Russia moving tanks in, sacking Kiev, then I guess U.S. intelligence will have absolutely nailed it. Russia's carrying out a full ground invasion of Ukraine, and just going crazy with it. That seems to be a little bit unlikely, but I'm just a kid. So anyway, we can get to our next story. So the opening round of Democratic infighting from the Civil War, the left versus the right, and the question is the left up to the task? Because the shots will be coming the messages will be strong from at least the right, looking to get the kind of the left wing Bernie Sanders side of things out of existence. Put and most importantly, really blame it for the absolute defeat that the neoliberal ideology or just the strategy of just doing absolutely nothing is about to get in these midterms. But yeah, that should be very, very interesting. All right. For the remainder of February and presumably into the spring months, Newsflash will now officially be back on that Monday, Wednesday, and Friday schedule, with Wednesday there being a bonus, but we're anticipating being able to do those Wednesday episodes a good portion of time, but we'll always have one to begin and close the week for you. And we're talking today a little bit about the Democratic Party. The midterms are coming up. Things are not looking good for Joe Biden, and really just not doing anything when it comes to his key legislation, letting it just absolutely get rotted out by the right of the Democratic Party in the Senate, and not really being able to put up any real resistance. And the progressives, by the way, not doing it either. And right now, the right wing of the Democratic Party has contacted their favorite guy, it seems, Mike Allen, the author of Axios AM, for this one. The headline is Squad Politics Backfire. Guys, it's not good. Let's get into this here. So, the hard left politics of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York and the so-called Squad once a dominant theme for vast numbers of elected Democrats. Okay, so again, hard left politics, I can take issue with so many little points in the statement. Again, hard left politics of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and there's criticisms here to be made of both sides. Because if you look at what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has done, especially in this Joe Biden administration, I very much find it hard to see how you can, what has the impact been? Where has there been any pressure? Where has there been any kind of head-on confrontation with the Biden administration over anything significant? At least Cori Bush really called him out on the eviction moratorium, and that was very effective, if only really incredibly temporary. But on the most important part of the entire thing, this whole agenda, this Build Back Better agenda, you got there halfway, but with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and some of these progressives here, their politics have been, very much not been put to the test. Like, key opportunities all throughout. I do not want to put on, because AOC, she voted against the bipartisan infrastructure bill, but she, I guess where I credit, it would be nice to see a little bit more of kind of a public push from the progressives on her, but got to give her credit for not doing that. But it is very, very clear that this is an effort to, this is not even acknowledging any kind of part of that, because this is being funded. If you look at the people who are giving direct quotes to this are people, pretty much basically the people knowing Axios, the people who commissioned this article, is Matt Bennett. He's the co-founder of center left, just centrist, corporatist think tank group, Third Way. He launched Shield PAC to defend moderate Democrats. So the push to defund the police, to rename schools, tear down statues, has created a significant obstacle to Democrats keeping control of the House, the Senate, and the party's overall image. So again, this is what they want you to believe. This is like the gambit they're going for. And with total media allegiance, it very well may work. They want you to believe that all this stuff that they did. The reason why they're completely fighting the polls is not because they have passed a grand total of one significant piece of legislation, literally one. Like, I'm sorry, that infrastructure bill does not count. It just did nothing. It didn't, except for maybe make the Amtrak a little bit better, which helps the Northeast. Like, not the fact they've done that. Not the fact that they have not done anything in terms of delivering their promises. Not the fact that, inflation has gone up. Biden has just, addressed it really horribly. He's just essentially done nothing about anything and let his party just get completely taken hostage by Manchin and Sinema. Well, one thing, that is not why the Democratic Party is getting hurt in the polls. It is, and this is what Matt Bennett and Third Way would want to have you believe, is because the Democrats have been trying so hard and so successfully to defund the police, which basically nobody except for, again, the squad has endorsed on a national level. Like, people don't really, I don't think, or can't really, associate that with the Democratic Party when you have mayors in Democratic cities are refunding the police more and more and more. You can count maybe on one hand, half of one hand, the cities who have made any kind of real or significant budget cuts to the police, and even when they have really not done a good job of refunding their communities, which is a kind of key part to it. And tearing down statues. Again, statues have not been teared down since December July of 2020. It's not statues people care about at this point. It's about paying their bills. It's about jobs. It's about gaining back a sense of normalcy after the pandemic. And a lot of that stuff is not really relating to schools. Do you see, because again, these people are just having one big kind of brain, this whole, where they're clearly going with this is the next bullet. The latest sign of the backlash was the landslide 70% recall this week of 3 San Francisco board members. School board members who were criticized for prioritizing issues like renaming 44 public schools, including ones honoring George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, over return to in-person classes. Again, this is not an indictment of any kind of materialist left-wing politics. This is the opposite of that. This is just really kind of crazed identity first politics, which has, if anything, been the hallmark of the same people that these people are trying to put back into power. So it is, and they could just turn and blame all this identity stuff, which, by the way, AOC was not pushing. AOC was not pushing this stuff. That is just a reality of the situation. And yeah, it's not the when it comes to schools, being open, I think that's an issue that plays some, especially with relation to the pandemic, that is definitely an issue that plays a big role. But is it, all these people being one thing we absolutely cannot tolerate is just the existence of this kind of politics is, frankly, this politics, the real kind of structural threatening change does not exist, especially from the squad or anybody in the Democratic Party, and not exist from these type of people by any stretch of the imagination. So he's but the most liberal city in the most liberal state decided that liberal activists had gone too far. And again, trying to draw connections where they would be politically advantageous to people like Matt Bennett of Third Way, but they just do not exist. Because, if you're looking at, 4 or 5, kind of activists, or school board, leaders in just one state, where this is just, again, it's not even happening in New York. This is not the way politics is even going in New York, or really anywhere else in the entire country, for that matter. But, it's all kind of an attempt to, put Biden's popularity on a very, very small percentage of the party. And also, by the way, tied to people that they hate. The last people who, by the way, could maybe, if they feel like it, threaten any kind of, future Democratic Party agenda. So it is kind of a win-win situation here, because it's what the Democrats do best, always shifting blame, shifting responsibility, and for just not doing anything. So here's another one. Representative Josh Gottheimer, New Jersey, chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, told Axios, "What I'm hearing at home and what I'm focused on are common sense bipartisan solutions, from tackling grocery and gas prices to cutting taxes and fixing our infrastructure." Again, he killed the infrastructure bill. He killed it. he killed the actual infrastructure, like the substantive infrastructure bill that I guarantee you is over 50% popular in his district, and has failed to get any kind of bipartisan solution done with the Build Back Better agenda. Again, so other than that, though, the Democratic Party functionally has not gotten anything done. There's been no priorities about grocery prices, gas prices, inflation. It just has not been there at all. Several squad members declined immediate comment. This is a seismic shift, again, from just a year ago. The signs have built steadily throughout President Biden's 13 months into office that squad politics are problematic when you control everything. 30 House Democrats, again, what is this? Again, just a complete opinion piece here of letting people who hate the squad define squad politics as something that it really is not. Is the squad if you look at AOC's tweets, they're probably about, Build Back Better. They're probably about, sure, she takes some stances I don't agree with, but she's critical about, when she's critical of Biden, she's not critical aggressively enough. She mainly stick to tweets and things like that are probably very ineffective, but she does really, criticize him about the right stuff. She's not criticizing him about, you didn't, authorize a bill to rename all these schools or tear down all these statues. So she's like, okay, this is lacking here, this is lacking there, but this is not a connection to make. What even is squad politics? It is very, very dishonest what they're doing. So, and they're just comparing it to and linking it to the fact that 30 House Democrats, the most in decades, have announced they'll retire instead of running in November's elections. They see little hope in keeping the majority in this environment. Democrats lose poll after poll in generic House matchups, which ask voters if they'd prefer an R or a D if the election were held today. Again, that is what they blame squad politics, not for the fact that there has been literally no politics of any kind from the administration that's supposed to be doing said politics. Republicans' decisive sweep of statewide offices in Virginia was powered in part by Democrats' failure to appreciate parent skepticism. But again, Terry McAuliffe is doing this. The furthest person from the squad. If Terry McAuliffe now is part of the squad, then this article in Axios is more of a joke than I realized. And I already thought Axios was a pretty big joke. Again, because I think there's a large part of this that is in fault of the left here, because they have fundamentally kind of failed to follow through on these policies in an effective way. Their activists have kind of come completely out of the picture. They've been co-opted. They've been silenced in one way or another, through their own actions or through the actions of kind of other groups. There's been no larger voice to say, here's what we mean by this, here's what'll help you. And a lot of times when that has been happening, it's been about really dumb stuff that should not be at all, where the movement is going. So House Democrats here, zooming out here, according to Axios, own polling and focus groups show many swing voters think the party is too preachy, judgmental, and focused on culture wars, according to documents obtained by Politico. Because, again, there is no other message, and it's very, very purposely that way, because that's all politics is. And if you don't do anything to correct that, that's all it will remain. And, again, that is really what they're trying to distract from here, and it's going to be interesting to see if the left, in its current form, and AOC or whatever, is going to let them kind of define this stuff away, because if the voters turn around and ask to AOC, hey, what'd you do? What's your big record that you can be so proud of? I mean, I don't know if she will have that good of a case to give them. All right, let's go to our next story.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It's news flash.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Today we are talking about, this is a little piece here in the Jacobin magazine. This is Ryan Zickgraf. writing, all professional sports teams owners are evil, but the sight of billionaire LA Rams owner Stan Kronke hosting his Super Bowl trophy on Sunday should inspire particular revulsion. He's one of the most despicable owners on the planet. Writing, you didn't have to be a Cincinnati Bengals fan to cringe at the sight of Stan Kronke reveling in his own glory on national television on Sunday night. The Rams exhausted themselves on the field to win the Super Bowl, but it was the franchise's stiff 74-year-old billionaire owner who first held aloft the championship trophy like a conquering hero after safely watching the action from the comforts of his luxury box of his $5 billion trophy of a stadium. But that Kronke's long career proves that it doesn't take talent or charisma, but some, like a quarterback Matthew Stafford or Joe Burrow, to succeed as a capitalist, just luck, connections, and money, lots and lots of money. So Kronke first got lucky in 1971, where he bumped into his future wife, then Missouri native Ann Walton, on a ski trip in Aspen, Colorado. Thus started a courtship with the Walmart heiress, currently number 83 on the Forbes list of richest Americans, that has resulted in marriage by 1974. Marrying and the money paid off quickly as the Waltons took Stan under their wing and got him a job with one of Ann's uncles, a powerful Missouri real estate developer. Marrying into the Walton family is still the number one accomplishment of Stan's life, wrote longtime St. Louis sports columnist Bernie Miklasz. Stan spent the next 2 decades, building up a real estate empire of cookie-cutter strip malls with a little direct help from a friend named Walmart. His retail properties were often anchored by Walmart supercenters, and from 1990 to 2000, he collected $154 million in rents and fees from the retail giant, according to the Securities and Exchange Commission, with the final half-decade as a member of its board of directors. Money also flowed into Kronke's coffers from the public in the form of hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies. His St. Louis-based real estate company received $170 million in tax breaks from local government on 10 shopping centers from 1994 to 2006, $54 million of which went to Walmart stores, according to Good Jobs First. While fleecing millions of dollars through corporate welfare, Walmart doled out paltry wages to its hundreds of thousands of workers, leaving the state to make up the difference with food stamps and other benefits. Kronke's long donated to the Republican Party and kept the money floating, to including a sum of $1 million to Trump's inauguration in 2016. So the Walmart heirs weren't just content with naming stadiums. They wanted to own the teams that played in them. In 1995, they expanded beyond super Walmarts to Superdomed football stadiums by purchasing a 30% minority stake of the Rams for $80 million. This was the time when, ironically, the Rams played in the fleet of Southern California because the taxpayers of Anaheim refused to subsidize the construction of an unnecessary state-of-the-art stadium. Enter Kronke's backyard of St. Louis, who fell for the siren song of the trickle-down effect of an NFL franchise on a city's economy, agreeing to hand over $280 million in public money, this $523 million in 2022 dollars, to fund the construction of the Trans World Dome, a concrete megaplex in downtown St. Louis that had all the charm of the Mall of America. It was a sucker deal made worse by guaranteeing the stadium's amenities would be maintained in the top quarter of all NFL facilities, a clause that would come back to haunt them not long after Kronke became full owner of the Rams in 2010. The Dome had just received a $30 million renovation in 2009, but that wasn't enough for Stan, nor were several proposals by St. Louis officials for over $100 million in additional renovations. By the time the city countered with a desperate $1 billion plan to build a new stadium with the Mississippi River to keep Kronke happy, he closed on a new deal for SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. So St. Louis sued for breaching contract, and the NFL agreed to pay $790 million, returning the Rams west anyway in 2016, making him public enemy number one in eastern Missouri. The mostly empty St. Louis Stadium, now called the Dome at America Center, is a massive symbol of capital flight and Kronke's dirty dealings. The state still owes tens of millions of dollars in bonds on it. The three biggest sports in St. Louis are the Cardinals, the Blues, and Kronke hating, says Miklasz. Kronke is only slightly popular in England than St. Louis, where he's been criticized as the deadbeat owner of Arsenal since 2011. Everybody Stay focused, Stan Kronke. And that's what we got for you guys today. We will see you on Monday. It's Newsflash.